Welcome to the Domestic Supply Chain Summit. Today we are joined by Brian Rafferty, Director of Brokerage at Capacity and Service Solutions. Welcome to the summit, Brian.
Thanks for having me.
I am really excited to get into this. This is the question that everybody has at the top of their mind, and that is, what is 2024 going to look like for the 3PL and freight broker space? So, Brian, hope you've got your crystal ball ready today.
Yeah.
Before we get into your fortune teller ways, why don't we get some background on you and kind of how you got started at Capacity and Service Solutions?
Sure. I've been in the logistics industry for about 35 years. Originally started with a family business, continued on a couple of different stops. That business was Canyon Logistics. Moved over to Transplace, and when Transplace got bought out by Uber, I was running their Chicago brokerage operation. I just thought it was probably best to kind of look around at that point. And Mike and Jean Regan, who owned Capacity and Service Solution, have a very good reputation in the industry. So I looked at that and have been here for now a little over a year.
Awesome. I feel like at some point in time, everyone has to have touched Transplace / Uber Freight within their logistics career, myself included. So yeah. It's like an honorary rite of passage.
There you go.
So I hope your crystal ball is charged up and ready, because the first question I have for you is, what's going to happen in 2024? What is your big prediction? What are some things to watch out for? What do you predict to see in the lands and the whole industry?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know if it's necessarily a big prediction or not. I'm sure everybody's probably thinking the same thing. Really, the couple of things that I think of is, one, you're going to have to be agile. There's so many different market trends going on right now. Rates have slipped. Economy's kind of gone in the tank here. So everybody's kind of wondering what's going to happen in the first part of 2024. And they keep pushing that prediction back to, when's the economy going to come back? The other thing is, where do you put technology into play? I think you're going to have to really invest in the technology side because customers are demanding it. So you don't really have a choice if you want to become or maintain your spot in the market for 2024.
Absolutely. I think that if we've seen anything, over the past few months with those the technology companies that are rising to popularity and having a lot of success, you can really kind of see what customers are clamoring for and what they are wanting out of their providers and their partners, because I don't think anyone's just going to settle for, we'll move your freight.
Yeah, no, that's not happening anymore. We've had numerous customers over the last, 6 months, really asking for more visibility. What are we doing? Where's my freight? And technology plays a huge part of that. That being said, we also can't, discard the, we saw what happened with Convoy. Everything was, no touch by humans. And all of a sudden, I think that's going to have an effect also, because I think that people in the logistics industry are going to see that and realize, hey, this is still a people-driven industry in a sales kind of organization.
That's something that we've been talking about a lot, that's kind of been the underlying theme through a lot of the conversations this year, is that, logistics and transportation is a relationship-based, it is. It relies so much on those relationships. It relies of, you being able to call someone and say, hey, I'm in a bind, can you get me out? Because that goes a lot further and works a lot better for within the space, because, you can't just, algorithms don't necessarily understand how to get you out of a bind.
Exactly. There is no two same phone calls in this business. Every single time the phone rings, it's something different. And it could be good news, it could be bad news, but it's something different for sure.
It could be, here's 500 extra loads for the year, have a nice day, or hey, got a truck on fire on the side of the road.
Exactly.
I'm not making that delivery.
That is exactly correct. Yep. Correct.
So touching back on some of those technology points and everything that you had brought up, how do you kind of foresee technology evolving? So shippers are already kind of asking for more visibility tools, but what kind of automation or even AI, what kind of role is that going to play kind of moving forward in the 3PL space?
Well, I think the AI part of it is yet to be seen. Really, it's such a new to everyone. Everybody's using different forms of it. I do think it's going to play a huge role. I just not sure how that's going to play out. But I do think, as far as technology, the everything from warehousing, robotics, and things like that to simple things like better visibility, better tracking. I think that is going to come into play. Now, whether that's outside services or internal IT work that you have on your own staff, it depends on what your situation is. Obviously, some of the larger brokers can afford to maybe do that in-house, where, a smaller mom and pop 3PL may be able to just provide some kind of outside service, whether it's a P44 or something like that.
I think the first time that I saw technology really like helping out, and I realized the beauty that is some of those automation tools, is something as simple as like those check calls and those track and trace options, where you can just send a text or you can just send a ping to a driver and that automatically updates it. My first job in logistics was sitting there calling driver, like a list of drivers saying, "Where are you? When are you going to get there?" And I was like, I could have saved my entire morning just doing it and then calling people who didn't answer. I could have saved so much time and stuff like that, that I'm like, I think those little improvements that aren't necessarily like, massive undertakings or like millions and millions of dollars to implement. I think those are going to be some of those quickest wins to maximize the amount of, human capital that you have. So that way you can make their job easier and make them handle the exceptions, which obviously technology is never really going to be able to handle.
Absolutely. And everybody, in the 3PL space is always looking to save that little bit of extra money. So whether it's eliminating, capital as far as, employees or whatever, by using this technology, you're going to get better, accurate information as well. Not just, hey, he says he's on Interstate 80 or whatever. You're actually going to see where the truck is.
Yeah, and it's going to be able to feed into other stuff, which is going to give your customers more of what you want. And really, it just kind of is like a win on top of a win on top of a win. So going into winning, something that is kind of newer to the landscape is those environmental and sustainability and kind of those ESG initiatives. That's something that really hasn't been a huge factor in the 3PL space pretty much kind of ever. So what kind of challenges are 3PLs going to have, and how are some of the easier, not necessarily easier way, but the best ways to kind of overcome those as shippers are starting to demand more, carbon visibility or other stuff like that?
Yeah, I think the big thing, and like you said, it's kind of a new in the space. I do think the one thing that we really need to do as an industry is collaborate on those things. In other words, where are we seeing opportunities for this, whether it's efficient equipment, the trucks are, some of this electric, vehicles, whether that becomes a sustainable thing in the industry is yet to be determined. We're not even sure it's sustainable in the car market, let alone, the truck industry. So there's some of that going on, driverless vehicles, all that kind of stuff that is kind of new to the industry. And I think the only way it's really going to work is if there is some kind of collaboration throughout the industry, whether that's in just our individual organizations or all the way up to, things in Washington. Hey, we're going to mandate something like this. We saw that years ago with, for instance, things that California did with trailer sides, trying to save fuel, things like that. So I think it's more of a collaboration effort overall to see where this is going to lead to.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, scope 3 and part of scope 2 emissions, you can't even report on correctly without your partners knowing, like without having strong partners also reporting on these kind of things. So I think really working together is the only option there. And it could be something as simple as, I have like just kind of opening up some backhaul lanes or seeing the visibility there so we don't have trucks on the road. As flashy and wonderful as electric vehicles and autonomous trucks and all that, as much as we love that, like those are great. And I would love to see those, in practice, but we're still a couple years away from those being on the road all the time. And those are like the main things. I think a more achievable thing that someone can like take as a goal that we're going to accomplish for 2024 is more of that, reduce our empty miles or even just start tracking our empty miles so we have a benchmark. So I'm calling my long shot for 2024 and saying it's going to be a strong benchmarking year in those areas because a lot of people, you need to know where you are to know how to improve. So that's my long shot is everyone's going to figure out some reporting and some tracking tools that they can then use to, reduce it down.
Well, again, that kind of dovetails back to what you were talking about as far as the IT end of things with all the data analytics. It's very important. I mean, there's industries that have completely gone over to using data, and I think logistics may have dragged behind a little bit on that. For instance, professional sports, they have really gone to, data analytics, which I know you probably could use some of with your fantasy football that we were talking about. So, that's how that's provided. So that's the same thing in the transportation industry. I think is going to be very important, being able to provide that information for leaders to make those decisions.
Absolutely. I think it's one of those where, you don't, if you don't have to know exactly how this driver performed on a Tuesday in the afternoon when it's rainy against this specific highway, like you don't have to get as into the details as baseball. But just, knowing, a driver's on-time performance or a carrier's willingness to accept loads, I think that's going to be something that's very important moving forward, especially when it comes to more or enhanced KPIs that shippers are inevitably going to start asking for.
Correct. Yep, absolutely.
So we have a little bit of time left, which means I got one more question for you. So one of the things that we've seen, it really started with the pandemic and it's kind of continued to escalate. And that's kind of, that global supply chain really starts getting interrupted when we have trade interruptions and then tensions within different parts of the world. What are some of those things that a 3PL can do to prepare for supply chain disruptions as a result of, maybe another pandemic, geopolitical changes, regulatory shifts? What are some of those things that, result in that agility that you talked about earlier?
Yeah, I think one of the things for sure is to talk to your customers. We're constantly at Capacity Service Solution, we're constantly talking to our customers about, hey, be prepared for disruption. Be prepared for, the next hurricane or the next war breaking out or whatever it may be, that there's things that are going to be affected. Obviously, the economy. Towards the end of 2024, we have a presidential election. What effect is that going to have on whether the economy or supply chain disruptions or any of that kind of stuff? So it's very important to discuss it with your customers, figure out where you're going, what they need to do. And really what they need to do is diversify their suppliers, not just use one supplier. And if that supplier is shut down, their whole business is shut down. They really need to, investigate that and make sure that they're using various suppliers for their equipment. And it's obviously that goes into the agile supply chain strategies. So, not only do we have to be agile as brokers or 3PLs, but also the customer does as well.
I really like that approach because, it's something that we've seen with the recent increase in nearshoring to Mexico and, changing some suppliers as a result of, everything that happened at the West Coast ports last year. So I think that I think that kind of woke everyone up, and everyone's paying a little bit more attention and coming up with those backup plans that you hope to never have to use, but you like having in the back pocket just in case.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to find you outside of the summit today, where can they find you Where can they find you? I
am on LinkedIn, Brian Rafferty with Capacity and Service Solution. Also, you can reach out to me at Rafferty Brian at transact.com. TRANZACT.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Brian. That's all we have for today. Enjoy the rest of the summit.
Thank you.